I'm so pleased to be able to have the opportunity to send you this message and give you a little bit of detail into our fall books. My name is Lia Ronnen. I'm the publisher and editorial director of Artisan Books. We're a division of Workman Publishing, often known as, I guess, sort of the higher end gift book. People used to refer to us as coffee table books, which is the word that I hate most, because I think it sort of insinuates something that's very pretty with empty content. And I think what we do, and the books that I'm going to show you that you'll see today, are all about really important content that is dressed up in a beautiful gifty package. I like to say that all of our books sit at the intersection of beautiful and useful, and they end up really making extraordinary gifts to give to people. I have a secret goal always, which is that one walks into a shop and sees an Artisan book, buys it with the intention of giving it to someone. They get home, they spend time with it, and they're like, shit, I'm keeping this for myself. And then they go out again and they buy another one, because they're not just empty gifts. They're extraordinary experiences. So I want to begin today by telling you about an incredible new book that we have from the author of In the Company of Women. If there's a book on the Artisan list that the majority of booksellers are familiar with, it's probably this book. This is a book that we published by the inimitable Grace Bonney in 2016. It is a book that was a $35 book that has now sold more than 300,000 copies, and it continues to be sort of the gold standard of this kind of book. There are a lot of copycats that came after, sort of interviews of women, creative spaces, but none have sort of captured the imagination as Grace Bonney was able to do with the breadth of her interviews and the quality of the women who were interviewed in this book. So since that time, follow-ups, as they're called, can be a very tricky thing for an editor and publisher to pursue. It's easy to get excited about the success of a book and say, how can I do that again? But it's often a trap, I think, because we tend to want to do more of the same, which can be hard because you're sort of splitting your audience, or you're just going back to the initial book. So as Grace and I were talking after this book came out in 2016, we spent the following year or so thinking, what could we possibly do here? And basically said, let's just be quiet for a while and listen to what we might have missed in this book. In the Company of Women was a book that was extraordinarily representative. It was a little bit ahead of its time. More than 60% of the profilees in the book identified as people of color or minorities. And we wanted to know if we had missed anything, because we thought that it was an incredibly representative book, and it was for its time. But we did miss something very, very important, which was, I think, reflective of something that we as a society miss collectively, and how often we tend to ignore a very important group of people, which is women over 50. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Grace's new book. This is called Collective Wisdom: Lessons, Inspiration, and Advice from Women Over 50. Now, the women in this book are technically all over 50, but the majority of them, I'm going to try to quickly flip through here and see how well I can show you the variety and breadth of this book. While all of the women in this book are over 50, most of them are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and above. This I just paused on Carmen Herrera, I think, who just celebrated her 106th birthday. She is the most well-known contemporary artist of her time. The amazing Betty Reed Soskin, I didn't mark her page, but maybe we'll miraculously come to her. If anyone read in the paper yesterday in the New York Times, there was an amazing profile of America's oldest, oh, there's Cheryl Strayed, America's oldest park ranger, Betty Reed Soskin, who just celebrated her 100th birthday and agreed to be a part of this book. This is a book that celebrates the possibility of transformation and accomplishment. We live in this world that is so youth-oriented and youth-obsessed, and everything about, if you're a publisher, you often hear, pitches all the time about how do we get to this young audience. And it's not just about getting to the young audience, it's about shutting out and not respecting the older audience. And when Grace and I both realized that we had really sort of made that mistake ourselves within the company of women, we wanted to correct it, which is why we came up with Collective Wisdom. And it's just been an extraordinary journey. I love In the Company of Women. I'm very proud of it. It is nowhere near as important of a book as Collective Wisdom. Editing this, spending time with it, night after night as I was reading the first passages of this book, my husband would come in kind of running into the bedroom where I was working, hearing me sobbing and saying, like, something wrong, is something wrong? And I just was always so touched by the lives that we can lead, the things that are so difficult to get over, and pulling oneself up by the bootstraps and just starting all over again. There are many lives to be lived. They take many, many different shapes, and these are 100 women who have kind of opened up their hearts and their souls and experiences to be incredibly honest, and to pass on the wisdom that can only come with age and time to a younger generation. It's an extraordinary book. It's mostly an American book. I think about 95% of the subjects here are American. One of the things that I'm most proud is that we worked very hard to not make this a coastal book. A lot of times the people that we end up going to are people in the news, and they tend to sometimes live in the same way and look the same way and experience life in the same way. I think close to all 50 states are represented in this book. There's city life, there's suburban life, there is rural life, there is a variety of religions and experiences. There are Palestinian women who came to Michigan. There are Indigenous women who are talking about their collective history and generations. There are woodworkers, there are miners, there are doctors, there are astronauts, there are bike riders, there are professionals, they are authors. Spending time in the company of women who have done it all ahead of us, I have to say, is it's just an incredible comfort. And this is one of those books that you will buy to give to a daughter, a friend, a cousin, anybody else. You'll start opening it and spending time with it and want to hold on to it and keep it as like a friend by the bedside table. I think that's that's what's going to happen with Collective Wisdom. So this book will be out November 9th. Again, it's the follow-up to In the Company of Women. It's a great opportunity, actually, I'm sorry to say this, but to sell them together. This always sells so well. And I look forward to hearing some feedback on this once you get the copy and tell me what you think. But I have to say that it's a very lucky thing to be able to publish something that one feels so strongly about, which I do, all of Grace Bonney's work. Okay, I'm going to turn to another sort of follow-up, which is another cookbook that you may be very familiar with. It's called 6 Seasons. Artisan published this book in 2017 by this guy, Joshua McFadden, who is a cook in Portland. He owns a restaurant called Ava Jean's. One of the ways Artisan has always prided itself on coming up with our own book ideas and establishing relationships with people and not waiting for agents. Sometimes when agents get involved, sometimes they're wonderful, but sometimes when they get involved, I think they focus on the wrong thing. It can just be money, and it's not about the quality of what the book might be or who the best publisher is for it. Another author at Artisan ate at this guy's restaurant and called and said, "You've got to get somebody over here. He's doing something very, very special." He was just a regional author at the time. Nobody knew him, Joshua McFadden. The restaurant is called Ava Jean's. And so we put this amazing cookbook together, 6 Seasons, which is also now, I think, just above 200,000 copies. It has become the gold standard in vegetable cooking. If it looks familiar to anybody. In many ways, it's the same story. How do we make a book that follows up the success of 6 Seasons in a totally separate topic, so that it doesn't feel like they're competing with each other? You'll have to forgive me because my first initial copy of Grains for Every Season also has a half jacket, but it was torn off by my terrible 2.5-year-old toddler who's having a lot of fun playing with all of the books and materials as they're coming in. But I'm so excited to present to you Grains for Every Season. It is actually a separate topic. Joshua handled vegetables, and now he's handling grains. Grains have, I think, gained, this is another kind of thinking that we always do as editors, is kind of watching the trends that we see happening in the food market. One of the things that really caught my eye in making this book was oh my God, Bob's Red Mill is everywhere. I walk into every kind of grocery store and it's just shelves and shelves and shelves of Bob's Red Mill. You know, we used to just know wheat and now we're comfortable talking about farro and sorghum and barley and rye and all these things that are incredibly good for us and incredibly tasty. So that was the idea behind this of like, wait, America is really waking up to the possibility of lots and lots of grains, and what can we do to represent that? Joshua has a palate like nobody else, and so that's what he went away and he did, and he worked on this for the last 3 or 4 years, putting together all of these grain-centric recipes. One of the things that I love about our bookmaking process is just making things look a little bit more individual. Not everything has the same format. We hired this absolutely amazing illustrator. It almost looks like photographic illustration to get into the nitty-gritty of the grains. And there's a variety of kinds of imagery showing you the grains and the possibilities of all of this kind of food. This also has something really fun that I've been dying to do as a paper lover for a long time, which is we have 4 gatefolds in this book. So you come in to learn how to make a grain bowl, the very popular grain bowl. We see it sweet green all the time, but a little bit more nuanced. And there's a chart telling you all the ways in which you can sort of sub in and change out and make grain bowls even better. Grains are, of course, also the basis for flour, and there are a ton of flour recipes in this book as well. I think that the breakout star, you, like me, may have noticed that everyone in this, at least on Instagram Live, seems to be on a major pizza kick and homemade pizzas. And a big part of this book is utilizing different kind of grains and flours to make the best focaccias and pizzas. And I just want to show you quickly the variety of pizzas that you can make in a sheet pan in this book. They are, as Joshua has always worked, he was a farmer. Everything is seasonally based, hence grains for every season, how to use them year round. And it opens up into this absolutely incredible full-size pizza that is going to transform people's pizza game at home. So, you know, I think this is such a good example of what we love to do at Artisan, which is thinking individually about each book, about how form and function come together. You know, the physical object should be the strongest manifestation of what the editorial idea is, and I think that that's partly why it works so well. This is an incredibly rich book. It's an incredibly generous book. It's got more than 200 recipes. I don't think anyone in their right mind would retail this for $40 if they understood the paper costs and what it takes. So I just have to show you, this is amazing. He makes these amazing homemade muffins, and these are all the different kinds of cream cheeses that you can put on them. Anyway, we've gotten some early buzz on this. I will say that 6 Seasons was an overnight sensation. I think people are a little bit more prepared this time, but I can't wait to see what this does. I think that the topic is right, and now there's, of course, a lot of followers for these books, and the combination of grains and vegetables is going to be very winning. So one more cookbook to tell you about, which is the phenomenal Cheryl Day's Treasury of Southern Baking. This is maybe the one I get most teary about, because Artisan has published Cheryl in the past with a couple of books that she has made with her husband. They own a beloved bakery in Savannah, the Back in the Day Bakery. It's a book that we originally published in 2012 and went crazy. But this is Cheryl's first book on her own. It's something that she and her editor, Judy, who's not able to be here today, have been working on for, I want to say, 6 years. This is an extraordinary story. Cheryl's great-great-grandmother was born enslaved and was actually really well known for her food. She was worked for the governor of Alabama, and this is a story that Cheryl only discovered late in life when she started exploring her family's roots, and it really led her to kind of understand, like, how is this baking in me, that this has come over such a period of time, when she discovered who her great-great-grandmother was and the life she had lived. And that set her on this idea of trying to create the real legacy of Southern baking in America. It comes from Black women, it was in the hands of Black women, and it has been, of course, transformed and taken over by many other people in the meantime. And this book is really about bringing it back into its rightful owner's hands. It is insane. It's got more than 200, I think it's more than 250 recipes for all the classics. There's popovers, there's biscuits. I mean, look at this. It's just like this absolutely insane deliciousness of everything that Cheryl does. She has an incredibly friendly voice, and I will tell you, as a cookbook editor publisher, one of the sort of dirty little secrets is that a lot of the people we publish don't really know how to write a good recipe. It's the worst thing. They sort of transfer a recipe from their restaurant, and they'll use like just everything comes in portions. They'll say, you know, use like 2 to 1 amounts of sorghum to this, and it all has to be translated and redone. Some publishers don't translate it that well. Some publishers do. In the case of Cheryl Day, she is part of the maybe the main reason, I mean, besides just adoring her personally and seeing what her presence does to people, one of the reasons I've decided to invest in her so heavily is the very basic reason that her recipes work like nobody else. It is a very rare thing today. Baking especially, it's difficult. Everybody has a different oven, everybody works at a different temperature, everyone kneads differently. Cheryl Day is a master. There are these 200 recipes. They're foolproof, I have to say. They're absolutely delicious, and I would consider it the new classics. I also want to say, yes, this is a Southern story. I can tell you as a food editor that there is no regional obsession countrywide as much as there is in Southern food. When we look at things like Food and Wine, or the kind of magazines that I read and follow to understand who the next up and coming people are, the Southern stories always go on the cover because they're the ones that sell the most. So I think that'll be really interesting. And I'm sure I've gone over time, but I'm going to just end with one more piece of delight, which is a very special little book that we're bringing out at the end of October called the John Darien Sticker Book. Some of you may be familiar with a book that we published in 2016. It was double the size of this. It was called the John Darien Picture Book. John Darien is a designer and artist who lives in New York City's East Village. He's got 3 shops that are nothing more than just obsession, I think, for people in the city for many, many years. He makes decoupage objects. He takes 17th, 18th, and 19th century images and places them under glass. And he'll make coasters, and he'll make snow globes, and he'll make all sorts of plates and incredible things from them. So the John Darien Picture Book was a collection of all of his best images that come from, actually mostly from books. They mostly come from books that he finds in flea markets all over the world. So we decided to take our big book, shrink it down, and turn it into stickers, because that seems to be the obsession du jour. It's a big part of my job, is sort of trying to track these things and what are people into and how can we give them products that will match their obsessions, and that's what we've done here. So this is something called an O-band. I love that it's called an O-band instead of a belly band. It only goes vertically. It can be taken off so you can have this pristine eye. And every other, I'll try to orient this a little bit, every other spread in this book is a sticker. So you have to kind of search carefully, but you can see that these things come off, and there's a beautiful rose that can be put on something, or this little devil cat, as my husband calls it, can come up and be put on something. I will have, I think in Firebrand or in whatever we loaded up to, there is an amazing video of John showing you how you can use these stickers to decorate everyday objects. Of course, like envelopes and paper, but also lamps and anything that, you know, will take a sticky surface. These are all butterflies I'm too scared to turn off. Apropos the 2-book conversation, we love to say that about John's work, that this is one that you really do need one book to keep as a book, and one that you can tear up and use all of these stickers. I'll show you briefly this beautiful little hummingbird that comes out of here. So that's it. I hope you enjoy our fall books. I hope you sell them well. You know, these are, I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be able to make books that I think just make the very best gifts across all categories. So happy selling, happy fall, and I hope everyone has a great holiday. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Lia. That was so great.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Sorry.
No, I'm stopping recording.